What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Grady and I listen to country music and whatever else I want to. And normally on this channel, I am talking about artists that are pretty freaking big. Most of you guys have heard of all of them. It's either going to be the Luke Bryans or it's going to be, the George Straits of the country music world. But today I wanted to talk about some artists that are a little more under the radar, or a lot more under the radar, that I think have been making some incredible music, and give them a shout out because I think a lot of you guys actually really enjoy when I talk about some of these smaller artists and you can discover something new. That's not going to be what I always do, but today I want to look at 5 stellar under the radar artists because they're making music that I think you guys would love. These people probably fall more into like the country folk Americana world, but I would just say it's under the country music umbrella. And if you like country music, then you'll like what these guys are doing. Before we get started, I do want to say a shout out to our sponsor, Ridge Wallet. Ridge Wallet makes aluminum minimalist wallets. They have a money clip on the back and hold all your cards in the middle. These slide really nicely into your front pocket, and it just is a much sleeker wallet experience. So if you're someone that doesn't want to carry around a bunch of receipts, if you're someone that is sort of tired of your own propensity to just shove things into your wallet and then keep this big bulky thing in your pocket, maybe check out Ridge and get 10% off your first order using the coupon code Grady, or you can go to ridgewallet.com/Grady. I really appreciate the way that they have been supporting the channel, especially as I've transitioned into being a full-time country music dude. So thank you to the Ridge. The first artist I really want to recommend to you guys is named Gabe Lee.
Well, all right, so long, my better days have come and gone. You see, I was a mess, y'all.
Gabe Lee grew up in Nashville, and you can tell that his sound is influenced not just by country music, but by a lot of kind of classic folk singing. People like Bob Dylan, or people like Townes Van Zandt. And this album, I think, is called Farmland. His album, I think, is really, really a good one if you are going to be on a road trip. It has a kind of golden sound to me. It's difficult sometimes to explain what his lyrics are about because he has a fairly inscrutable songwriting style, but there's tons of images in it. It's easier for me to say how this album makes me feel or what it reminds me of, and it reminds me of either like a seedy motel or like a Dollar General on the side of the highway in Arizona that only is like half stocked with the shelves. There's a kind of griminess to it and just sort of mundane plainness to it that is really awesome.
Richland Walmart to Frankie's Pawn. It ain't stopped snowing since you're gone.
The sound of this album is really gorgeous. There's a lot of dobro and there's a lot of guitar, and you even get a little bit of harmonica on this album. It's very simple. I don't think that any of these songs are overly dressed up. And his voice is very conversational. It's definitely, like I said, kind of a Bob Dylan-y type voice, and I really, really enjoy it. The song Eveline, I think, is the standout to me. It is so, so beautiful. As he's kind of longing for this girl Eveline, and they couldn't be together, but he wishes they could. I don't know if it's referencing the James Joyce story, Eveline, but it's really pretty either way. I'd also recommend Last Country Song, which is not a country protest. It's a statement of desire that he wants this girl to be his last country song. It's also interesting that Gabe is an Asian American. I haven't ever seen that except for Mr. Wynn in Hey Arnold.
You can offer me a diamond-plated pearl.
And I enjoy just getting to know new perspectives that I haven't heard before in country music. The next album I want to mention is Traveling Mercies by Emily Scott Robinson.
Packed a suitcase, sold the rest. Couldn't wait to leave that town. U.S. highway rolling west.
Emily Scott Robinson is a gal from North Carolina that has crafted, immediately one of my favorite albums of the year. I'd heard this album once before. I'd heard it recommended not only from Saving Country Music, but also from Mark over at Spectrum Pulse. And I was flabbergasted when I really re-listened to this album recently and heard the songwriting on it. This is going to be one of the most popular albums with songwriters this year because she has a plain-spoken way with words and with imagery, with the threads of cotton dresses, with the simplicity of a silver band on a finger. She is able to paint pictures with words in ways that very, very few songwriters are. And Traveling Mercies is an album that reminds me actually a lot of Same Trailer, Different Park by Casey Musgraves. Emily Scott Robinson has a really, really clear voice, almost like, I would say, an Alison Krauss or a Sandra McCracken. There is so much beauty in her voice, but there's so much more beauty, I would even say. I mean, her real competitive edge, I think, is her songwriting. And this is a gorgeous album that deals with some very, very real themes. A song like The Dress.
Was it the dress I wore? Was it the wine he poured? Was there some sign I ignored?
Is the most poignant song I've ever heard about sexual assault. It's absolutely devastating. And she finds herself asking the insecure questions. Was it the dress that I wore? Was it the wine that he poured? Were there signs I ignored? In some ways, it is like it's so dark because she is willing to be vulnerable enough to let you into those questions that she's asked about the worst moment of her life. There's also a song called Run about escaping her abusive husband. And then there's, simpler, nicer songs like Better With Time about her new man. And there's another song on here called Delta Line that is not happy at all, but I think it's quite lovely. And it's about just sad women on a train. One of them's pregnant. One of them dropped her baby. And there's such a tangible reality to this album, Traveling Mercies. It blew me away. I think it'll blow you guys away too. I can't recommend it enough. Next, I want to talk about Flatland Cavalry's Homeland Insecurity.
You've been gone for way too long, thought she's never gonna come back down.
So if you've ever listened to my podcast, you've heard Flatland Cavalry because my intro and outro music is their song No Shade of Green from their first album. But actually, I'm going to talk about their second album because that's really where I discovered them. And that's called Homeland Insecurity. Now, I've raved about this album in the past, but I really, really enjoy it. And I think if you are someone that wants to dip their toe into the red dirt scene, then I think Flatland Cavalry is a great place to start. They have a lot of similarities, I would say, to the Turnpike Troubadours in that it's not overly percussive. There's a ton of fiddle. There's some honky-tonkers. They have a really nice balance of upbeat, kind of hopeful, bright, pleasant music, but then also some more sensitive stuff. I would say there's not nearly as much self-loathing in Flatland Cavalry than there is in Turnpike Troubadours, and I actually really like that. This is a little bit younger of a version of kind of some of the types of sounds that they make, but I think they absolutely have their own spin on things. Cleto Cordero is their lead vocalist and songwriter, and I think that his way with words is really, really excellent. And on a song like Pretty Women, that one really stands out to me. On a song like Sleeping Alone,
I'm tired of sleeping alone.
I gotta mention Sleeping Alone. This is one of my favorite songs of the year. Even just the first few words of that song. Counting constellations on the popcorn ceiling. That is one line where you can just imagine immediately where he is. He's in a hotel looking at the ceiling, bored. And they're so good at taking little phrases like that and painting a whole picture for you. He's definitely also an old soul as he sings about ostrich boots on another song like Old School. He's just a really interesting character, and it's really fun when he sings with his now fiance, Caitlin Butts. If you've never heard Life Where We Work Out, you gotta check that song out, and I promise you'll be a fan. I'm just super into this album. It is so fun to listen to. Then let's talk about Yola.
I take a ride out in the country. Get some wind.
Now, Yola is from Bristol, England, and she put out an album earlier this year called Walk Through Fire that I think is excellent. Walk Through Fire is kind of a breakup record and kind of an evolution record. There's a lot of songs about her getting past a relationship, stuff like Ride Out in the Country. But then there's also a narrative of really finding herself on tracks like the title track, Walk Through Fire. Now, I'm bearing the lead here because the extravagantly exciting part about this record is Yola's voice, which is husky and soulful and good.
Only you know what you're looking for.
But what's really cool to me is it's not just hitting you over the head with her belting. It is sometimes quiet, sometimes smooth, and gets some of that rasp in there, and sometimes she's bellowing, and she'll go for these big high notes, and it's so exciting because there's actually dynamics built into this record. I really, really, really like the kind of country sounds of this record. Sometimes you get a little more almost primitive in the sound of things, stuff like Walk Through Fire, but then other times it goes for that kind of Chris Stapleton, Anderson East sort of retro soul kind of thing. And that's the lazy term, but it's fitting. If you like an Anderson East record, you might really like a Yola record. And the last person I want to talk about is Charles Wesley Godwin.
They put a roof over my head and the armor on the tanks in Normandy.
You guys might have heard me talk about Charles Wesley Godwin before. I found his album Seneca earlier this year and just fell in love with it. This is an album about West Virginia. He grew up in Morgantown, West Virginia, and the Seneca Creek ran right through his backyard. He's the son of a coal miner and a teacher. And there is a real affection for West Virginia captured in this album through the bellowing hills and the mines and the rivers and the naturalistic imagery and the creaky floors. All of that is here in spades on his record, Seneca, as is kind of Charles Wesley Godwin's strong. I've described it as a little bit of a bleat. I've heard other people say he has a warble, but he has an interesting voice, a real storyteller's voice that almost captures kind of the echo of a mine on a song like Sorry for the Wait, which is an absolutely gorgeous song that's dealing with death.
So don't go weeping so long. Sing the melody of our song.
You are getting some of the heaviness that I think his voice brings. The production on this record is excellent. It is going to remind you, I think, a little bit of something like what Cody Jinks brings to things and something like what Tyler Childers brings to things and that kind of Appalachian sound. Hardwood Floors is a real standout to me and one of the few kind of really upbeat, fun moments on this record. Strawberry Queen is romantic.
I crowned her in my mind, oh my strawberry queen.
I love that song. I love the description of this woman as his strawberry queen and how he'll defend her, and he's almost a knight for his strawberry queen. So I really love this record, and I want you guys to check it out too. So those are the 5 albums and artists that I really, really think have captured my imagination this year that you might not know about. And I try and sprinkle in these recommendations in my videos, but I wanted to give a dedicated video just to shout out how good these albums are. I know a lot of these are folkier, a little bit more low-key. These aren't necessarily mainstream albums, but that's why we have the internet, you know? We don't just need to listen to things that are on the radio. So check those out, y'all. I think you'll enjoy them. And until my next video, I'll see you.